Good afternoon, Chairman.
Good afternoon. I would like to welcome everyone present in the Chamber and those listening online to the Greater Lincolnshire Combined County Authority Audit Committee meeting. My name is Andrew Dyson and I am the independent chairman of the committee. Can I remind those in attendance that the audio-visual feed of this meeting is being broadcast live via the GLCCA's website. We are not expecting a fire drill today. Should the fire alarm activate, please follow the officers to the evacuation point. For those of you who may be new to the membership of an audit committee, the professional body that is known as CIPFA, the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, states that an audit committee provides a specialist forum to support and monitor the authority in the areas of governance, risk management, external audit, internal audit and other related areas. The vision for this audit, both now and going forward, is continually seeking to meet the Audit Committee's terms of reference in the most efficient and effective ways, swiftly adapting and introducing relevant best practice from peers and other organisations. This vision will be achieved over a series of meetings with the key objective being independent and informed decision making. As such, the Audit Committee is apolitical, as our key role is considering the findings and relevant remedies. We must be independent at all times. The absence of politics is to enable members to provide an objective view of the documents and reports that are vital to the effective governance of the authority. As the authority evolves, so the work of the Audit Committee will change. What we see now may look very different in the future. We are at the start of the journey. We will now move on to the formal agenda. Could I ask any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Hassan. We also have Councillor Roberts replacing Councillor Woods and Councillor Foster replacing Councillor Reid. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 2, declaration of interest. Do members wish to declare anything at all, please? No? To safeguard the integrity of this committee, perceived as well as actual interests must be declared. If you are unsure, please contact the monitoring officer prior to any meeting of this committee. The first item, item 3, review of the authority's constitution. I'd like to welcome Nicola Carver, Member Services Manager, Lincolnshire County Council, to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. May I refer members to the report, which is at page 5 of your meeting paperwork, and this sets out a series of proposed changes to the GLCCA constitution for your consideration and comment prior to submitting it to the authority meeting on the 17th of September. Whilst constitutional reviews are normally considered by an authority on an annual or possibly a 6-monthly basis, in this early period of the authority we'll be continually reviewing the constitution to help it adapt in order to reflect those emerging operational requirements that become apparent through its practical application. There are 5 areas of review covered within the report that are due to be submitted to the authority in September. 3 of those areas are currently under review and due to expediency have not been submitted to this meeting of audit for you to consider today. However, for transparency, I'll just briefly outline those for you for your awareness. The first of those is the addition of a recruitment process for the Economic Advisory Panel, which has been developed and documented in draft form. You may know from reading through your constitutions that there's a space set aside by the authority to include this process within that constitution document. The second of those areas is a review of 3.6 of the Constitution, which sets out the scheme of delegation. The review of this may bring forward some minor changes to delegations to officers from the authority in order to include anything that comes to light through this establishment period of the authority. And the last of those 3 areas that will go directly to the GLCCA to consider is the minor operational changes to executive boards. Some of those changes are subsequent to the proposed changes to the authority procedure rules, which are presented to you at this meeting for your comment at Appendix B, which I will cover. In addition to those three areas that are mentioned in the report, I just want to let you know that a substitution and delegation policy is being developed. It won't form part of the Constitution, but we will reference it within the Constitution. So moving on to the areas that are submitted for you to consider at Appendix A and Appendix B. These have been circulated within the report, one of which looks at amendments to the procedure rules, as I've already made mention to, and the other looks at the terms of reference for this Audit Committee. So through you, Chair, seeking assurance from members around the proposals on these matters that we put to the authority, and of course your input as a committee and your comments around your own terms of reference. One final comment, Chair, if I may, just before I hand back. Subsequent to submitting this report, there's been an emerging operational matter around achieving a quorum for Overview and Scrutiny Committee and Audit Committee. And that arises from the statutory requirement for 2/3 of the committee to be present to achieve that quorum. Officers are currently seeking practical solutions to assist the authority in achieving this for each meeting, and one of those solutions is exploring the rules around substitutes and delegates. And whilst that solution is not going to be put forward to this meeting at this point for members' consideration, I thought it was worth mentioning in case there's any discussion around that in regard to the terms of reference. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions, please? Yes, Councillor.
Hello, Councillor Ian Bint here from North Lincolnshire. Yeah, just a couple of questions if I could please on Appendix A. I'm very comfortable with most of it. There's no reference in there to the global internal audit standards. It is mentioned later on in the internal audits, and there's no reference to the Head of Internal Audit's opinion statement, which came into force in April 2025. Although they are mentioned on the internal audit plan. The first question is, should that be referenced in there, or is it just that it's not been updated, or is it not relevant? So it's a question really to consider, please.
Thank you.
Through you, Chair, I would probably think that maybe Claire Goodenough, the Head of Internal Audit, may be the best person to advise on that.
Thank you. So just so you know, it's not good practice to list the regulations within a constitution. It would be normal to do that with something like audit through the audit charter, which obviously is coming to you later, or in the audit plan as it's agreed by the committee.
Thank you very much. And a second question, if I may, Chair.
Of course.
I think the suggestion is on page 12 to change the Chief Finance Officer to Head of Internal Audit in relation to the Audit Committee. Where are we? On page 12, where it says Internal Audit. Consider reports and assurances from the Head of Internal Audit, etc. I'm reading that and I'm thinking, well, that causes a bit of an issue where the Head of Internal Audit will give both the opinion statement and the assurance that the internal audit process is to a satisfactory standard. And I think it would be better to have that as two separate pieces, because you're actually sort of, it sounds a bit like marking your own homework on that one. So it's one to consider really for this committee. And obviously that you, as chair, you play a role in Head of Internal Audits, appraisals, etc. I just think it'd be good to have that. It seems a bit of a downgrade taking the Chief Finance Officer out to the Head of Internal Audit when that one person is both providing the statement and the assurance that it's good.
I think if I may come back to you on that, I think the normal practice as part of the Audit Committee work plan is to have an annual performance review of both internal and external audit, and for the matter to be covered in that way. I don't know what your thoughts are, please.
Chair, I'd probably refer again to Claire Goodenough to answer that question.
Thank you. So the way it was previously worded would have meant that my independent reports would go through the Section 73 or the Chief Finance Officer. That's not really good practice. You should hear directly from me as your Head of Internal Audit, so that it can't be watered down, it can't be embellished. What you actually hear is what I've got to say. The performance of the audit function is a slightly different thing, and that's carried out by the chair and by the Head of Paid Service together to make sure it's delivering what it should be. What the Audit Committee will get from me is how I demonstrate we meet the standards for the service, and if we don't meet any standards or if we breach anything, that will be part of our annual audit report. So it's a slightly different way of reading it. It's just assuring that independence of the audit service.
Has that answered the questions, please?
Yeah, it's provided an answer, thank you.
Thank you for your contribution. Anybody else have any?
Thank you. Councillor Alan Beale, South Holland District. I did provide a copy of my sort of notes, etc., the other week. I'm not sure whether they made their way to you. So I have a few questions, if I can, please.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Just page 6 on the information, the sort of context of it. Some of these procedures set out by law, others are ones the authority has chosen to follow. It would be interesting to see which ones we have chosen to follow, please. On page 7, 6, the amendment, my interpretation of that paragraph is that it implies that there could be, where there's a discretion, it could mean different chairs at different meetings can interpret the rules differently.
Would you like to come back, please?
Thank you, Chair. So in regard to the statement about that some rules are set in statute and some are local choice, I think that is apparent in every constitution. That refers to the constitution as a whole. I wouldn't at this point be able to set out for everybody here present exactly which ones are those bound in statute and not. That would actually be quite a big job to highlight that within the Constitution. But if you have particular rules which you are concerned about, you would like to know whether they're in statute or whether they are local choice, please let me know and I'll do my best to assist you on that one. In regard to the reference to different chairs at different meetings. So the rationale behind adding in relevant chair at points throughout the council procedure rules is so that the chairs of each meeting are able to interpret and apply those rules. Currently, as the Constitution sets out, it is for the Mayor alone in order to interpret and apply the rules. And in practical terms, say for example, one example might be here in this committee, without that provision of having relevant chair, the chairman here would not be able to effectively preside over a meeting and interpret the rules. So that is the rationale behind that. I hope that answers your question, but if not, please let me know.
I do have one or two more, if I may.
Of course.
Thank you. On Appendix A, page 13 at the top, so 2, 3, 4, progress to implement. Should it not be may find unacceptable with required actions?
Through you, Chair, could you just reference that again so I might find it in the paperwork?
Yes, item 4 at the top, progress to implement recommendations including concerns or where managers have accepted risks that the authority may find unacceptable with required actions. In other words, we don't like what you've done, this is what should be done.
Are you referencing Appendix A, page 13 of
Yes.
the pack? I'll just refer that on to Claire then again, if you can find the reference to answer that question.
Sorry, can you tell me again where the reference is, please?
Page 13, top of the page, sort of, what's it, 1, 2, section 3, or part 3, progress to implement recommendations, including concerns.
Okay. So one of the services that internal audit offers is that for the first year, we will make recommendations from the findings that we identify through our audit work. Those recommendations are proposed recommendations, and we work with service users to make sure that the recommendations fit what will work within that area. There is an option for managers, if they don't agree with that recommendation and we can't come to a negotiated agreement, the manager can say, I'm not prepared to accept that and I don't wish to take any action. From an audit perspective, that leaves a risk within the organisation and we would report that left risk to the committee. So that's what that's referring to. It's about understanding the level of risk that isn't being taken by the manager, and then it's up to the audit committee what they wish to do about that.
Thank you. One more, Chair, if I may. Also, page 13, 8 review, 8.1, will be reviewed on an annual basis, or if legislative changes require, question mark.
Thank you.
Thank you. I accept your point that you're making there. One caveat that's within the Constitution as a whole is that if the legislation should change, that the monitoring officer would accordingly make the changes to the Constitution, because of course the law will always override the contents of a Constitution anyway. But those changes would of course be reported back to the Audit Committee as par for course. If you would like that being referenced within your terms of reference, I can't see an issue without making that clear, if that would be of assistance. But the terms of reference as they're written wouldn't preclude what you're asking for.
Thank you. That's it for the moment. I will cancel where I've picked up grammar issues.
Thank you. Just to provide some further information to the third point that you raised, the communication of unacceptable risks is part of the global audit standards. Correct me if I'm wrong. I forget which part it is. You can probably remind me.
It's the global internal audit standards, the 24 ones. Yeah.
Sorry, anybody else have any further comments to make at all, please? In that case, we'll go to the proposal. It is proposed that we consider the proposed amendments and additions to the authority's constitution detailed in the appendices of the report. Secondly, we consider the proposed plan for the ongoing review of the constitution. And thirdly, recommends the amendments, additions and plan for adoption by the authority. I'm satisfied that we have done this. Could I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you. We will now vote. Those in favour? Thank you. Anybody against? Thank you. Motion carried. Moving on to item 4, the internal audit plan. I would like to welcome Claire Goodenough, Head of Internal Audit, Lincolnshire County Council, to present the report. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the first audit plan for the authority and is focused on providing assurance around legal and financial arrangements that are currently in place for the authority. The report outlines the risk-based processes undertaken and the covering of statutory aspects for our delivery. The first year of delivery will be focused on legal compliance with a review of policies, the Constitution, sharing data agreements and financial processes and arrangements to ensure they are fair and equitable to the authority across the partnership arrangements. Work has already begun in the background and field work will commence, hopefully, if the audit charter is approved today. The work will start officially, hopefully, towards the end of Q2, so we're expecting to start in September. And progress reports will be reported to the committee twice a year so that you can see what we're delivering, how we're progressing against the plan, if we've made any changes to the plan, if they're immaterial. If they're material changes, they will come back to the committee to make sure you are fully on board as to why those changes need to happen. This first year of the audit forms a part of a wider risk-led strategy for delivering audit services, which will remain fluid and open as the authority changes and starts to grow in resources, services and outcomes. Very happy to take any questions on the proposed plan to aid your decision for approval.
Could I ask if anybody has any questions, please? Yes, Councillor.
Hello, Councillor Longbottom, City of Lincoln Council. Just having a look at the plan, I see that there are actually, for each of the review areas, there are actually no days mentioned. There's no idea of how much time will be spent on each of these areas for review. So that's one question I've got as to whether that ought to be added into the plan. Also, I think you've perhaps answered actually the justification for these areas that have been chosen, but I think we have to be assured as a committee sitting here that what's been covered is sufficient, and also whether it's whether it's all going to be possible, because many of the things are in quarter three, and so there's just a question as to whether everything can be covered in the year. So if you could answer those questions, I'd be most grateful. Thank you.
Happy to. So in relation to the days, we offer a risk-based agile audit service. So if we were to say legal policies would take 10 days and constitution review would take 10 days, that would be an allocation of 20 days. But if the legal policies actually we found that our sample found problems, we would extend that sample to be able to provide reliability and depth to our assurance rating. So whilst we have a set number of days that we give to the authority, it's not good practice to put in the number of days that we will apply, because it's responding to what we find. Obviously, if we find some things looking really good, we don't need to extend our sample, we don't need to go to a greater depth. We will then use those reserved hours somewhere else within the plan. So hopefully it answers your first day's question. In relation to the timing, so we've purposely put things as quarter three so that there's data for us to look at. If we were trying to look at things at the start of the year, because the authority was only created very early towards the end of the previous year, there wouldn't really be a lot of substance for us to look at. Whereas when we start to look in quarter three and quarter four, it gives us a chance to look at the policies and the procedures to make sure they're fit for purpose. But also a key part of auditing is doing the walkthrough to say, okay, this is what your procedures say you will do. We walk through the process that you've gone through on numerous occasions to see whether that aligns, which then supports whether we can give assurance that the process is fit for purpose and the process is also delivering what it should deliver. So it's set up in a way that we give you greater reliability. I can't guarantee the plan will be fully delivered, but I have been with Lincolnshire County Council for 3 years, and each year we've delivered 100% of our plan, because I think it's very important that you can rely on the assurance that we are able to provide to the committee.
Any further questions at all? Has that answered your question?
Yes, thank you. That does cover things. I think my concern is that if I understand the point about if you find something that needs further investigation, then you need to spend more time on it. But that also raises a concern about the actual costs of funding the internal audit plan as well. And I suppose by allocating what you think is a reasonable number of days to each of those items, you've then got an idea of how much the whole thing is going to cost. So at the moment, we're unsure as to whether it might, if there has been no budget set, so we don't know whether it's either going to be under or over any amount that's been allocated to internal audit. Thank you.
So just on that, we do have an agreed number of days that's agreed with the interim head of paid service. The plan that sits behind this, which is our detailed plan, actually slightly exceeds that, but we're not charging for the extra days. Because I'm supporting the committee and some of the training I do will fall within that plan. This agrees to the number of days that we've agreed with the head of paid service, and we've got a service level agreement in place for that. If we were to have an excess of days, we obviously wouldn't charge for it. If we were to utilise our days more prior to us making that agreement, we would have that conversation with the head of paid service or somebody appropriate to have the conversation with. It is not our expectation, and with our other external clients, we very, very seldom charge for additional days because it's about making sure we've got processes in place to be able to flex either way. So I would not expect there to be an over or under budget as far as the delivery of the service goes for the year.
Right, no, thank you. Perhaps it would have just been useful to know that there have been allocated a certain number of days somewhere within the plan. Chairman. Thank you.
If I may, you never know how long an audit is going to take until you're partway through it. And even then, the budget can suddenly increase. The most important thing is that the Internal Audit Service provides the required coverage and level of assurance that is required by the organisation. The audit plan is a fluid document that changes frequently and correct me if I'm wrong, can change by the second.
We're not that agile, but probably by the day.
Any more questions, please? Thank you, Councillor.
Hello, thank you very much. Yeah, a couple of questions first, just on the audit plan. The first thing, it mentions quarters. I presume they're financial year quarters, not annual quarters. Is that correct? Yeah, thought it was when you mentioned quarter 2 September. Okay. You've mentioned a couple of times about this proposal being risk-based. So we can be assured that it is risk-based. Do we actually need sight of the GLCCA risk register, and or when will we actually see that? Because we've got a risk-based audit plan, but we don't know what the risk is.
The risk register is coming to the next meeting, Councillor.
Yeah, but we've got a plan now to approve now that says it's risk-based. We haven't seen the risk.
So if just from an audit perspective, because I'm not
Yeah.
delivering your risk management services, if you look at figure 1 on page 4, that shows a variety of things that feed into our internal audit risk assessment. Our internal audit risk assessment is different to your risk register and how you manage your risks. So there are other factors that feed in. Its risk-based approach for year 1 is very much about being legal, being fair, being equitable. Because there's not that many services running and there's not that many staff, the risk profile is very low from an audit perspective, which is why we've gone in to demonstrate where the risks actually sit at this point in the inception of the authority. So hopefully that kind of answers your questions from an audit perspective.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that when people put a word in like it's risk-based, I want to know what risk it is based on and where that comes from. But yeah, I think you're satisfied with that. And it is year 1, as you say. It is year 1. My second question, really, the first one is resourcing, and it's an assurance from Head of Internal Audit. Are you adequately resourced to deliver this? Or will we end up with some things getting sort of delayed or dropped to a lack of resourcing, which can happen with audit? So do you feel that you're adequately resourced, or do we need to support you in your resourcing?
No, I believe we are adequately resourced to deliver the plan as it stands. I can't guarantee we won't have that resource, but the intention is we've got stability in our outsourcing team. So we have 2 separate teams. We have a team that's Lincolnshire County Council, and we have a team that's external assurance. And our external assurance is very experienced in delivering to other organisations. And again, we've never not delivered, in my time, we've never not delivered 100% of our plan. So I am confident as I feel comfortable saying.
You may regret saying that. Thank you very much. Okay, and my final bit, really. I think it was mentioned, I just picked up, that this would be brought twice a year to the Audit Committee. And it's a request, please. It's such an important part of what the Audit Committee does. I believe it should come at every meeting, and there should be no changes to the plan that haven't been approved by the Audit Committee, because you may find that something's been moved or dropped, or it is fluid, but then you don't find out about it for a good 6 months, and that might be too late to do anything about it. So a request really that it comes to every meeting, please. So
you wouldn't normally bring the audit plan again. You would report changes and progress in the progress reports that will come to you twice a year. By exception, if there are changes to the audit programme that are material, we would normally bring those anyway prior to us actually making those changes, so the committee can understand what the risks are. If it's a small change, let me try and give you an example. So for example, where we've got data sharing agreements, which is based on foundation practice and compliance, if, for example, there was some justification that we didn't look at foundation, we just looked at practice and compliance, I wouldn't expect to bring that to the committee. That would be something that would be communicated in our progress report to understand the reasons why. However, if somebody suggested that we didn't do a constitutional review, I would deem that to be a material change, and I would bring that to the committee to say, these are the risks of taking this out of the programme, these are the risks of keeping it in, which would you like assurance on? Would you like to go with topic A or topic B? But that would come through the progress report rather than bringing the audit plan more times to the audit committee. Hopefully that answers your question. It felt a bit waffly.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the progress report, will that come to every committee meeting?
It's scheduled at the moment for twice a year because it has to give us chance to deliver some work that's reportable. So whilst we are in the live process, so whilst we're doing our feed work and our quality assurance processes, I wouldn't report anything because it's in train. Once it's gone through our quality performance processes, and part of that is I assign the assurance award, when it's reached that point, that's the point where we share it. It's not likely there would be material outcomes to share with you at every single meeting. But we can see how it goes.
Yeah,
I'm very happy to support
I'm not
us there.
personally comfortable with that. I think it leaves too big a gap, if I'm honest, and I think it should be an update at every meeting so that we as a committee get that assurance. Even if the assurance is, it's in progress, don't worry about it, there's nothing to report, that's fine, it's your area of business, but I think waiting 6 months for an update is too long.
I'm entirely happy to do what
Yeah.
works for the committee. Doesn't make a
I don't
big
know what
deal
other
of
people
difference to
feel
us.
on that, but they were my points. Thank you very much.
Any further questions from anybody at all, please? In that case, it is proposed that we approve the 2025-26 internal audit plan. Please may I have a proposer?
Does that include the reporting of the progress at each meeting, or is that twice yearly? Just so we're clear about what we're actually approving here.
I think what you're asking for, correct me if I'm wrong, is half yearly updates on internal audit progress.
No, I'm asking for every meeting updates.
For it to be a standing agenda item. Yeah.
What? Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yes, at every meeting, not twice yearly.
Thank you. So
Is
subject.
Is that what we're proposing or not?
Right. So subject to that amendment, are members happy to approve the internal audit plan, please? Could I have a show of hands, please? Anybody against? That motion is carried. Thank you. Item 5, the internal audit charter. Claire.
Me again, sorry. So I'm pleased to introduce the Internal Audit Charter to the committee. This is a document which sits behind the audit function and contains the conditions in place for delivering internal audit functions across the authority. This is used by the internal audit team as well as senior management to understand access, authority and reporting lines for the audit function and how it operates within the authority. Any breaches are identified, they would be reported to the committee. They have very serious consequences for the service as well as for myself as Head of Internal Audit. It is good practice to review the Charter when there is a fundamental change. So once this is approved, there would be a reason to bring this back, which would be something like a change of somebody in my role, change of audit provider or change of leadership that would impact upon this. We haven't started any work physically in the field work because the audit charter has to be approved so people understand the constraints in which we work in and that we would have that required unfettered access to all the documentation to allow us to do our job as fully as possible. Again, very happy to take any questions on the content of the charter.
Any questions, please? Yes.
Thank you. I assume to begin with that this is a standard template that's used all sort of unitary authorities, etc.
It's new because it aligns with the new internal audit standards that were published in 2024 and impacted on public sector from 2025. It's taken from the Institute of Internal Auditors template. So there are one or two nuances that we apply from the SIPFA application code, which is because we are governed slightly differently as internal audit than would be in the private sector, for example. But it's very, very standard, and there will be very small differences between what you would see here in the authority and what you would see in a private organisation.
Thank you. One other, if I may. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Page 49, about the 6th, 7th thing down, develop resource strategy which suggests practical approaches. Strongly suggests or recommends? Suggests seems rather weak.
So the idea behind that is if we found something in our resource that wasn't delivering as we would expect it to, our suggestions of how to correct that or address that would be included in the report, which would be for discussion at the Audit Committee. It doesn't mean the Audit Committee can instruct us on what to do for the service, but it's that we would say, for example, if we were getting poor feedback, we would say, we're getting poor feedback in this area, we've reviewed the process, and this is what we're suggesting we will do, so that you're aware of that. It then leads to that conversation of additional suggestions if there's something you wish to suggest, but it's us saying this is what we're suggesting we'll do, or this is what we have done to address it, and this is a result of that change of resource workforce planning.
Any further questions at all? Was that...
Yes, thank you. Just with reference to page 49, the second bullet point down, it talks about reporting annually on the internal quality assessment, including progress against action plans. So I don't know whether this is the point that's already been made about the progress of the internal audit plan and how it's going, and that we feel that it should be raised at every meeting. And then I suppose annually then there is a sort of an overall position given. So I'd just like to raise that, whether that ought to be just clarified a little bit more. And also I'm curious as to whether the actual, how the audit plan is coming along and how much of it has been done, whether there are presented to other committees, a scrutiny committee, exactly how much of the audit plan has been completed at a particular point in the year, as is the case with other authorities. Thank you.
So in relation to that second bullet point, that's about our internal quality assessment. So we have an internal quality process that runs throughout the year, and as part of our statutory obligation is to report once a year to the Audit Committee on our internal quality. So we will talk about what those quality processes identify, how we've responded to them, and whether we believe our self-assessment of quality assurance has been there for the year. So that usually ties into our statutory reporting to give the formal opinion, which is just once a year. So that will be included in that report. In relation to progress with the audit plan, that will come to this committee. So internal audit is completely separate of management. It's not something that's overseen by the management within the authority. So we work together and we work collaboratively together, but the progress that we deliver will come to this committee. And now the decision's been made, it comes to every committee, you will have an updated idea of what we're delivering, where we are in that process and what we've got left to deliver. So that will come each time.
Has that answered the questions? Thank you, Councillor. Any more questions at all, please? In that case, it is proposed that we approve the Internal Audit Charter. Please may I have a proposer? Thank you. May I have a seconder? Thank you. We will now vote. Those in favour? Thank you. Anybody against? Motion carried. Thank you. The next item is item 6, the Risk Management Framework. That will be Ruth Carver, Deputy Director of GLCCA. Thank you for stepping in to provide the presentation.
Thank you. The previous lady is on holiday, so I do apologise for not appearing on the agenda. So the paper that you have in front of you concerns the risk management framework for the combined authority. It's a draft framework for you to consider. It is your responsibility to consider and comment on the framework, and then we can recommend the framework to the combined authority meeting, and the plan is to hopefully do that on the 17th of September. So there was a question earlier about the actual risk register. So the process would be that we would approve and recommend the risk management framework to the combined authority meeting on the 17th, and then we can apply that to a draft risk register. As you would expect, as any organisation, we have a running risk register, but we need to apply the framework to that. So the risks are identified, but the framework has to be placed on top so that it will be put into a system for you to look at. So the appendix is there for you to consider. It, as any risk management framework does, looks at the risk management process, discusses the reporting structure, the roles and responsibilities, and then importantly gets into the people's processes for leadership, for escalation, for ownership and assurance. And the last section within the framework looks at the risk definition and puts some definitions on what those risk definitions might look like, and then overall adds into the scoring system so that we have a standardised system that would be applied to the risk register. So it's a very fairly kind of simple approach to that to apply and gives guidance, but we are seeking for comment and then recommendation for approval for that to go subsequently onto the combined authority. So happily take any questions from that point. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the framework for risk management rather than the actual risk register itself.
It is.
Thank you. Any questions, please? Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm making a habit of this. No, it's just something I've noticed on this, 'cause I actually think it's a very standard risk management framework, and it's what you'd expect to see. And I'm not know if I'm reading this quite right, but you've got 4 levels of assurance running from substantial, adequate, limited and low, which are nicely colour-coded. But then in the actual probability to be impact mechanism, we're only running on 3. And I don't know, I don't understand the relationship between 3 levels on your risk management matrix and 4 levels of the assurance. So I'm just not quite getting it. I wonder if you could explain it, please.
Could you assist, please?
So, yeah, you're right. They're absolutely kind of standard, kind of best practice that we've taken from good practice around from others. This is taken from the Lincolnshire County Council's assurance framework model that most local authorities do. And so the assurance level, the 4 levels that are within that table, are the definitions of the assurance, and then the relation. Is it the question? I didn't quite understand the question. Is it the relationship between the assurance and the probability, and how you calculate the end score?
Yeah, it says
Okay.
you'll use that matrix to target the current and target risk scores, which is a 3-level matrix. And then, but when you're looking at your assurance level, you've got 4 levels, and I'm just not quite sure the relationship between how that 3-level risk matrix, probability to be impact, relates to the 4 levels of assurance. That's the bit I'm a bit confused about, if I'm honest.
So I've offered to pick that up because it comes from the County Council's framework, which it's under my responsibility. So they are actually 2 things. So the assurance level will provide you with a level of assurance on how solid those mitigations are that are managing that risk, and the impact and probability framework will be used by the owner to assess what their view is. So there's slightly 2 different things. They don't work together, but they work together to give you an overall picture. So, for example, if something was rated as a 4, a 2 and a 2, that would give you the 4, so you would understand what that means, but then it would be given a level of assurance to say, actually, there's an adequate piece of assurance, we support the fact that this is a 4, or actually, we've got a low level assurance around this, we're not sure it's a solid 4 because of the mitigations aren't the quality they should be. So the 2 work together, but independently.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Any other questions at all, please? Just a comment moving forward. Once we have the framework in place and the risk registers develop, then it will be a case of providing the audit committee with information on risk trends, for example, which may be via specialist software or it may be by using tools such as Power BI. Because of the fact that we can all look at a risk register, but it's understanding the direction of travel with the risks. So that's why I raise it now. It's something of a long term, but as it's the first meeting of the committee, it's raising that as something to consider going forward. Thank you.
Within the risk framework, we've talked about displaying the direction of travel so that we can monitor that over a period of time. So when we go to apply the risk management framework, the provision is within there, and then we can take that forward.
Thank you. So it is proposed that we recommend the GLCCA to adopt the risk management framework as set out in the report. Please may I have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor. May I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor. We will now vote. Those in favour, please. Thank you. Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 7, the work programme. Claire, if I may.
Of course you can. So I believe this is a work plan that's in development, and as the committee starts to define how things will look and how frequent things will come to the committee, this will start to develop. I appreciate it doesn't give you a lot at the moment, other than I think Caroline will bring the risk register to the November meeting. And in between times, I understand that the chair has some ideas as to what this could look like, so that next time this comes to you for a proposal, it will have much more meat on the bones than we've got at the moment.
Thank you, Claire. This is from experience of other audit committees, so there may be standard items for the audit committee. For adverse internal audit reports, the manager attends the next meeting of the audit committee. Any internal audit outstanding recommendations over 3 months come to the internal audit, come to the audit committee. Any external audit outstanding recommendations, same conventions for internal audit, they come to the audit committee. There's also annual counter fraud reporting. What you mentioned earlier, Councillor, rated risks to be reported with updates at each meeting until there is effective and economic risk mitigation in place. Longer term, as the audit committee and the organisation moves forward, we may be looking at an annual review of departmental risk registers. There will also be biannually, in a confidential session, the fraud risk register. The key thing about the fraud risk register is this is uncertainty about fraud. It's not what's actually happening at the present time. So we're looking at the potential rather than the actual with the fraud risk register. For any fraud investigation over £10,000, members of the audit committee will be given limited update after the conclusion of the investigation in the confidential session. Data protection is an area which comes to the audit committee in terms of freedom of information requests, data subject access requests, and progress with Information Commission Office compliance. With regard to this, the key areas will be impending and completed ICO investigations, as well as FOI and DSA compliance statistics, not the actual detail itself. Looking at project risk registers where the project is over £100,000. Looking at any local government ombudsman complaints upheld. There's also the possibility, I don't know if you can advise me about if Treasury Management is going to come under the remit of the audit committee. There's also any other external inspections, annual whistleblowing report, and any technical updates. So these are plans for areas as the organisation starts to grow and develop that we will consider. This is a long list, but when we look at it realistically, there'll be, say, 3 or 4 of these items appearing on each audit committee agenda. It depends upon the activity of the organisation. So in establishing these requirements now provides clarity for future meetings as to what to expect with regard to the audit committee work plan. As Claire said, we will put this in a formal work plan for you for the next meeting. I move that we note the report and approve the existing work programme. Does anyone have any dissent at all, disapprove with what we're saying?
Question, if I may, Chair.
Yeah.
The question, and I don't know the answer to this, so it is a straightforward question. Obviously, as a new authority, I presume you'll have things like auditors, and there'll be backstops and deadlines we have to meet, and all those types of things. Do they need to be in the plan? And when do we start getting to that point of appointing external auditors? Because as an audit committee, obviously, we should have access to the external auditors.
With regard to internal audit, have been appointed, and external audit were also appointed at the start of the organisation. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's fine.
I just want to know when we'd get sight of who the external auditors are and their input into Audit Commission, because obviously we need to start building a relationship with them to get that assurance as we go forward.
Thank you.
Yes, you're correct in that point. And as we effectively started as an organisation, didn't we, in April, and have been fully operating as a mayoral combined authority since May, so a matter of months. So we've proposed for a next agenda item, because we're considering and looking and understanding our timetable from national government and what requirements we have. From Section 73 could bring a report laying out those particular areas. So it would be an area of the work plan that we would update before the next meeting. But yes, there certainly are, as you would expect in public money, that there are timetables that we have to work through.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I appreciate very much the comments that you've made about the work plan, which I did think was a little bit thin on the ground when I first saw it. So that's great that it's going to be fuller in future. I'd just also like to think about training as well, because I imagine that most people here are not experts in reading accounts. Or have a really full knowledge of risk management. It depends on what your role is already with your council, but certainly any training programme I certainly would appreciate. I'm sure others would as well. Thank you.
Yes, of course. As with all audit committees, the standard practice is to have an annual evaluation and questionnaire where we identify where training is required. Moving forward, and we're talking, should we say, face-to-face training initially, but moving forward, the intention is to have a glossary of terms, to have YouTube or similar training available, so members can access that training at a time that is convenient to them. The most important thing is that we have informed and objective decision making. So it's making sure that if we have, for example, the external auditor's report coming up, that there is training provided prior to that meeting, so members can make those decisions from an informed way.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Marion Boyd. I'm Councillor for North East Links. I'm also Deputy Chair of the Audit Committee there. I've got a couple of points. I specifically found an hour to spare to talk to our 151 officer so that I could get clued up ready for today, and I think he's been working quite hard in the original formation of the authority. So he made a couple of points which I think are really relevant to us as an audit panel. One is there's clearly a substantial amount of money coming in as an investment, and the question is what is the authority planning to do with the investment policy? A suggestion that was made was that perhaps we should be looking at 60 to 90 day short term in order to basically make some money on it. And I just thought that it's not something we should let slip because of the amounts involved, and we as an audit committee should bring that to the attention of the council. I don't know whether you need a recommendation on that or whether we can put that forward as a recommendation.
I think we're looking with this at, correct me if I'm wrong, at either it goes, Claire, could you advise as to whether it should be something that we look at, or?
I was going to say it would be good to have your advice, kind of, Claire, on that. But in terms of the substantial amount of monies that you kind of refer coming into the combined authority, there is a full budget report going to the 17th of September full combined authority meeting. It's a budget update, effectively. And they effectively fall in two camps, I suppose. The first camp being an investment fund that was established as part of becoming a mayoral combined authority. So that's the £24 million of cap and revenue per annum. And there's no core funding for combined authorities in that way. And then the second pot can be classed as money that has already gone to existing constituent authorities, but is coming through the combined authority, and therefore is being passported out directly. So the headline figure looks quite large, but the actual kind of money that is controlled by the combined authority in that way is substantially lower. But yes, I think I can't comment on the remit of whether it is a remit of this committee and other committees to make recommendations on that treasury management policy. But I definitely can kind of say that that is something that we're looking at for our portion of the funding that we're controlling. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, you mentioned the external auditor. I thought that the appointment had been made with Mazars, and our question would then be, can you name the engagement partner for us, please?
I would have to come back to you on that point.
That's right. Thank you. We'll
Thank
make
you.
sure that
Thanks.
information is provided.
And you might like to wait until you finish this particular point before I've got a couple of others, if that's okay.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, sorry, just picking up on the treasury management aspect. Can we make sure that that's in the audit committee work stream, please, that we get an update from the relevant officer on treasury management so we can find out and be assured as to what they're actually doing with it?
I think, Councillor, the issue has been, if you correct me if I'm wrong, treasury management, there was some discussion as to whether it's going to be a part of the audit committee or whether it's going to be part of scrutiny.
Thank you, Chair. We'll come back and we'll confirm to the Audit Committee. At the moment, it's not within the terms of reference of the Audit Committee, this is what you've notified us today. It should be in the scrutiny work planning, but we will double check and we will make sure that we inform all members of the Audit Committee which way it'll be, but it will have some oversight.
Okay, thank you. It's something I'm used to seeing in an audit committee is a treasury management update. So when it wasn't there, it was a very valid question. How are we assured on the financial side of the company if we haven't got the treasury management update?
Thank you. Claire, you wanted to come in, please?
I just wanted to say that the Mazars partner is a gentleman called Gavin Barker.
Thank you, Claire. Any other comments at all, please? I move that we note the report and approve the existing work programme. Sorry. Sorry, Marion, my apologies.
So the other couple of things I wanted to bring up, and one has been brought up, is the training and development. And I think it's really important that we should be doing training and development before our meetings on specific projects, like topics like treasury management and accounts, because we've all got to bear in mind that there'll be a self-assessment at some point, and we want to be able to complete that successfully. And that I thought was really important. And also, I've just got some concerns about the inclusive business plans that the authority may be working on. For instance, the bus policy, the bus transport policy, and I seem to understand that that relies on, to some extent, population deprivation, that sort of thing. I think what we need to do as an audit panel is to be aware of the formulae that are involved in working out business plans so that we can understand how the decisions are being made and to make sure that they're being robustly made on priorities that we consider are relevant from the audit point of view.
Thank you. Could I ask, will that fall within the scrutiny committee rather than the audit committee, please?
I'm going to just defer to Ruth Carver, who I think has an answer to your question.
Yeah, I maybe happily take that quite specific question offline, if I may. We're not currently developing business plans for buses. We are to become a local transport authority, so we're not a fully fledged local transport authority. It's concurrent. That means that the constituent authorities and ourselves are both transport authorities, but sometime in the future then we will be the transport authority. And the first piece of work in the transport field is the development of a local transport plan which would cover all forms of transport across the whole of Greater Lincolnshire, and that has a kind of a year's timetable. But if your question is specifically about formulation of funding, then in all of the funding that we've been handed down from DFT, we have not made our own metrics up in how that would be allocated. That has been gone on the existing mechanisms that DFT have previously allocated it. So we have passported it across and not made any adjustments to that in this first phase. But happy to take the specific offline if it's easier. Okay.
Perhaps if that sort of thing could be made available to members, then we would understand how things are being done. If that would be appropriate, please. Thanks.
Thank you. My apologies for earlier. I'd like to move that we note the report and approve the existing work programme. Does anyone dissent? Thank you. This concludes the business of this meeting. Thank you everyone for your time and attendance. As it's the first meeting, if anybody wants to stop for 10 minutes at all for a brief discussion, that's fine. Thank you very much indeed.